Good morning, everybody. Oh, it must have been a tall guy up here. We fixed that. I was asked to come over here today and give everybody a speech.
Hey, Tommy, you're going to need to pull up on the mic a little more, buddy.
Pull up tighter?
Yeah, get right up on it. There you go.
All right. Oh, I need a push to talk. I was an old pilot, which is as opposed to a bold pilot, because as we used to say, there are bold pilots and there are old pilots, but there are no old, bold pilots. But you got to get the mic right in your mouth, I guess. I was asked to come over today and give everybody a speech, but I'm not a speaker. I'm just a simple country lawyer. But I know how to talk about what I know about. And so I'm here to talk to you today, to tell you a few things that I've observed over the course of the last years in studying the most magnificent document, second perhaps only to the Declaration of Independence in the history of mankind. The Declaration of Independence may be ranked up there above it because it is a source of our Constitution. And the Constitution and the concept behind it is a source of the strength and the nobility and the bravery and the courage and the magnificent achievements that this country has made over the last 30 years based upon the backs and the hands and the minds of the rejects of virtually every civilization on earth. And that accomplishment is now at risk. And the reason that I'm going to talk about that instead of my case, because a lot of folks expect me to talk about the trial, expect me to talk about the tax issue alone. But today's topic of discussion is Hope for America. And the Hope for America is a lot bigger project than the tax issue. Now, I don't know how many people in here are truth troopers. Can we get a show of hands? All right, I want you guys to stand up. If you would, all of the truth troopers, all the members of Truth Attack who are out there right now, all of the supporters of Truth Attack, those who contributed to the effort with their dollars or their work or their time. I want to thank you, gentlemen and ladies, because you are the hope for America. You are the embryo of the truth, and the truth is what is going to take to set this country back free. Thank you. Thank you. There is no silver bullet. I've been asked multitudes of times since getting into the tax issue. Actually, I've been in it for the last 14 or 15 years, but I've only been in the tax honesty community for a few months. I knew nothing of the tax honesty community. I knew nothing that there was even a constitutionalist community that wanted to return us back to a constitutional republic. I thought I was all alone. I thought I was the only one. And I can't tell you how encouraging it's been for me to run around the country and to meet so many people that are still devoted to our constitutional form of government, because that's what our obligation is. That's where our duty lies. When the war was over in 1781, peace still wasn't achieved. It took a couple of years for us to establish a peace treaty between the 13 former colonies and the former Mother England. Not between the United States and England, by the way, but between the states that were united. The United States came about a few years later, and that government was formed by these 13 states as an improvement on the Articles of Confederation, which were really not much more than a NATO-type mutual defense alliance. But that Constitution, I'm convinced, was divinely inspired, and it was produced by the most amazing and wise men that have tread this soil. I first became introduced to the Constitution when I was in about the 6th or 7th grade. And I'll never forget how amazed I was by it. I was fascinated by it. I don't know what drew me to that, but just the concept of this Constitution and how every part of it dovetailed with every other part led me to embark on 40 some odd years of study of its history, of its content, of its development, of its destruction. And I am convinced, beyond any reasonable doubt, that it was impossible for that document to have been generated without divine inspiration, without providential intervention. For that purpose, and because, and I saw a gentleman walking around in period dress a minute ago, and it reminded me, all of us who have been the beneficiaries, all of us who are the heirs and legatees, but only the temporary custodians of the benefit of that document, are obligated to pass it on to the next generation. Are we going to meet that obligation? I say we will. And I thank you for that, sir. But the only way that we will is for us to undo the damage that's been done. And the damage hasn't been done in Congress. The damage, that's where it originates. That's who's carrying this out. But I was asked in a radio interview recently, who's at fault? And it caused me to kind of look. I mean, it's not a question of who's the bad guy now, who's fighting against us. We know who they are. They're the I got mine party, and you're out party. That's who's we're fighting with. But whose fault is this? That's right. We the people formed this government. We the people created the federal government. It's our creation. It is our creature. We are the creator. And yet it is wagging us as though we are its tail. We are permitting that. We are letting it do that to us. We are permitting it to convince us that we are dependent upon it. What was the declaration that I just alluded to a while ago? It wasn't the Declaration of Freedom. It wasn't a Declaration of Liberty. It wasn't the Declaration of Equality. It wasn't a Declaration of Justice. It was a Declaration of Independence. Now, why were they able to declare their independence? Because they had depended upon nobody but themselves and one another for their security and their prosperity. Americans started out that way, and that's the way Americans have to end up, or we're going to lose it. It's already 90% off. Already, we have lost a limited form of government. Already, we have lost our republic. And the question is whether our generation is going to be able to go up to those gates and look Thomas Jefferson, Jimmy Madison, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, George Mason, and all of those other great men in the eye and say, I preserved your gift for me and passed it on to the next generation. When that war ended, Benjamin Rush, one of those great men, made the comment. Perhaps he didn't realize how important that comment really was, but he made the comment that the war for American independence is now over, but the American Revolution is only beginning. If you look back, and you take a history freak like me, I guess it's easy, but when you look back at our history, And you'll see that not one generation has been spared the necessity to stand up and risk, and stand up and bleed, and stand up and make sacrifices in order to preserve those rights, to preserve that limited constitutional republic that was supposed to be our distant and remote federal government. This generation is no different. The only difference is the nature of the enemy. The golden generation, probably the greatest generations of Americans since the founding fathers, those who established our country, fought enemies abroad. Our enemy is not abroad. Our enemy is us. Our enemy is in Washington, D.C. Our enemy is in the banking institutions, the huge perpetual I will live forever but you won't corporations, the mega wealth, the assemblage of collective wealth away and apart from us peasants. That's where the enemy is. But most of all, it's in our own complacency, and it's our own feeling of dependence. The public of the United States has become a bunch of whiners and complainers and waiting for somebody else to come and solve their problem. Never was I more embarrassed and ashamed of people, of my own people in Louisiana, than I was when Katrina struck New Orleans. And they're sitting there on their front porches, not willing to get up and lift a finger to help themselves. And if they're not sitting on their front porches, they're out stealing something that belonged to somebody else. And they're whining and complaining that the government didn't do enough fast enough. Since when is the federal government supposed to protect us against storms? Since when is the federal government supposed to pick us up and give us a little hug and a kiss and a Band-Aid when we skin our knee? We're Americans. But ladies and gentlemen, we're allowing this. We are the ones that are saying, okay, we'll take the handout. You know, once upon a time, many years ago, a dog, fox, coyote, or something like that, wandered up near out of curiosity and out of the smell of something that smelled good to eat on a camp or encampment of human beings. A bone was cast aside, and the dog accepted it. Now they're our pets. Now they are our possessions. Now we decide where they sleep, how they sleep, what they eat, what they do, and we decide when they die. One of the things that I was reading a while back said, you know, why dogs are better than women. Because when dogs get old and cranky and snap at you, you can take them to the vet. But are we going to be dogs, or are we going to be men and women? Are we going to be pets that are cared for, pampered, or neglected, and then put down whenever our usefulness has ended? Or are we going to be Americans standing on our own 2 feet, called hind legs, and taking accountability for ourselves and our own actions, and telling the federal government, no, I don't need you, you need me. You belong to me, I don't belong to you. So that makes it our job, ladies and gentlemen, to fix it. And how do we go about doing that? I mean, this is a big elephant. Everybody in this room has a pet issue. Everybody in this room has a common goal, and that is to restore the republic. I believe that. And I have a pet issue. You know, you have the money issue, you have the Federal Reserve, you have the tax issue, at the fraudulent application of the taxes to millions of Americans to whom it does not apply. You have the issue of foreign relations being foreign interferences, and invitations to disaster. You have a question of securing the borders and making us a sovereign nation instead of a swinging door. You have the question of there's no distinction between Americans. When I say Americans, I don't mean North Americans, South Americans. I mean talking about the United States Americans. A distinction between us and others from without. This isn't the neighborhood glee club. This is a country, a sovereignty. We are us. You are not. So all of these issues are real attractive, and all of these issues I know are important to everybody here. But we would have to hit every single one of those issues in order to really restore what was intended by the Founding Fathers. So where do you start? It's huge. You've got 90% of Americans thinking that they are victims. You've got 90% of the American public right now is satisfied with sacrificing its freedom as long as they don't have to be responsible for the decisions that are made. How do you change that? Can we be free if 90% of us are willing to lay down our freedom in exchange for victim status, in exchange for passing the responsibility for our decisions onto somebody else? Are we taking that bone? Are we taking then that handout of a piece of meat? Are we taking then that handout of a shelter in a storm? Are we now going to get down to the point to where for a pat on the head we will run out and jump into ice cold water and fetch a duck for Tom Cryer like Jesse does? My 120-pound lab loves that. But he's doing it for me because I trained him to, and because he was born to do that. We were born not to do that. We were born to rule our lives, not to be ruled by others. And what we've got to do to fix it is to put the government back in the box. Now, we all talk about the Constitution, and I guess I probably should have had a graphic up here, but I think you guys have a picture in your mind, a blank screen. I want you to draw on it for me. We all talk about Article 1, Section 8. That's the limited powers of Congress. We talk about Section 9, prohibitions. We talk about Article 3, jurisdiction. We talk about this, that, and the other. We love taking the Bill of Rights apart. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment. Well, there was a Second Amendment, wasn't there? I was counting the other day, and I said, what's that 2 and that 9 and that 10? It seemed like I remember a Second Amendment, a Ninth Amendment, a 10th Amendment, but they're in there somewhere. Nonetheless, we like to take it to pieces, but what about putting it together and apart? Now, after about 40 years of devoted study to the history and the Constitution, I finally come up with a way to explain it. Really, until you understand what we're supposed to be having, you don't know what you're going after. Picture a big triangle, if you will. Draw 2 lines through that triangle, one toward the top and one about in the middle. Now, the biggest chunk of that triangle is at the bottom, isn't it? Put U.S., no periods, in that bottom section. In the middle section, put states. And in the top section, put U period, S period. The smallest part of that triangle is the United States government. They should be the smallest part of our lives. The biggest part of our lives is down here where we are. That should be where the decisions are made. We should decide what kind of cars we drive. We should decide what kind of jokes we tell. We should decide whatever we want and how we are going to run our schools and our towns and our communities, how our banks are going to be operated. We should make these decisions, not somebody else. We should decide how we live our lives. The states, in the middle, that section makes fewer decisions. Decisions that are made by us through our representatives who are accountable to us, because they have to live under the same laws that they make. those laws do touch us just as that section touches us. But the laws that touch us are also made by the representatives that touch us. The men and the women that we see at church on Sunday, we see at the barbershop, we see at the grocery store, they have to look us in the eye when they come back from their state capital, and they have to answer for what they've done. How many of you have bumped into a congressman lately? Huh? My congressman doesn't even live in Louisiana. He lives in Virginia. He announced today that he was not going to run for re-election. Yeah, that was a big surprise. He moved out last year. The issue of what we do in our lives is supposed to be us. And then finally, up in the very top, you've got a triangle that's the United States government and doesn't touch us. It's allowed to tell us not to counterfeit. I've never counterfeited. It's allowed to tell us not to commit piracy on the high seas. And, well, I'm trying to quit. But, that swashbuckling and all that stuff is so much fun, The only problem is if I had to swing from one ship over to another, I'd either break the rope or dislocate my shoulder. But that's what they're allowed to tell us what to do. Outside of that, get out of my house. Get out of my neighborhood. Get out of my school. Get out of my bank. Get out of my street down here. Don't tell me what my speed limits can and can't be. Don't tell me who I can say can drink alcohol or not drink alcohol. Don't tell me whether or not my state has the power to prohibit people from killing unborn children. Don't tell me my state doesn't have the power to kill bad criminals. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Get away from me. That's what we need to tell them. But the first thing we need to do is realize there is no silver bullet. We're not going to be able to go out here and take this one issue about our borders being secure, this one issue about money, which is a genuine issue, one issue about the Fed sucking the life out of the middle class. That's not enough. We can't do it with anyone. I've told people with the tax community, and everybody's looking for a silver bullet. Everybody's looking for that garlic garland that's going to keep the IRS away from them, or it's going to make the beast run back into its cave and hide. It's not there. There is no silver bullet. I don't know how many times I've had to tell people, don't eat that, Elmer. Spit it out and go wash your hands. And don't play with the kids that gave you that anymore. The snake oil salesmen that are preying on so many people, that are not out there trying to educate people as to what the truth is about the income tax, but they're out there to make a living off of it. And whenever they do that at the expense of sending one person off into the cave by himself, and he never comes back. Another life is ruined. We've got plenty of martyrs. I almost was one myself, but I didn't have a choice. When I found out about the lies and the myths that the Internal Revenue Service has told us, I had already 25 years previous made that choice when I raised my hand and swore to defend the laws and the Constitution of the United States and the state of Louisiana. And whenever I, the year before that, raised my hand and swore to die for it if I had to as an officer in the United States Army. But there is no need for everybody to go out and go into that cave and fight that battle. Now, I survived it, and a lot of people have compared that to David and Goliath, but I'm here to tell you that's not true. David had to take his clothes off before he fought Goliath. If I had done that, I don't think the jury would have left to go into the deliberation room with the same impression of me. Now, so what do? It's like eating an elephant. You do it one spoonful at a time, right? You do it one person at a time. There are millions of people out there that need to realize that they have been talked, cajoled, paid, given a privilege, given a little extra benefit in order to be a slave, paid to be a peasant, reestablishing, the feudal system in America of all places. Those people have got to be told, those people have got to be re-educated into believing and understanding that they do have hind legs and know they're not victims. Bad things happen to good people, and good people handle those bad things. I'm not going to give you a catalog of mine, but you've got a catalog of yours. And you handled every one of them, or you wouldn't be sitting here today. So what do? Well, my suggestion to you is that the first thing we do is that we put this beast, this monster, and I'm not just talking about the IRS, because we're not really trying to get rid of the IRS and the Truth Attack. Truth Attack that we started up a few months ago is a coalition of the tax honesty groups that are truly interested in making the public understand that they've been lied to, that they're being stolen from every day, trillions of dollars a year, being sucked out of the middle class, that it doesn't even apply to. But when Truth Attack started out a few months ago as this coalition, it set out to accomplish just that, and that is to re-educate the public, to demythify them. You heard of being demystified. Well, we're here to demythify. And that's, I think, is the most important first bite of the elephant. And the reason is that by getting the IRS, not to destroy them, just to follow the law. All we want is for them to admit that the law says what it says in black and white, and to obey it, the law that it's given to enforce. Collect your tire manufacturing excise tax. Collect an income tax if it applies, but if it doesn't apply, leave me alone. Don't tell my employer to take money out of my paycheck just because I might once upon a time do a tire manufacturing act of some sort. Don't come and take my money ahead of me. Leave me alone. If I owe a tax, I'll pay it. But I don't owe an income tax. And you probably don't either. Only because we know the truth. Those of us who are clued in. Well, the Truth Attack is out to do that. Now, there are millions of them out there, and I can't help but think somebody a while back says, you can't possibly educate everybody in America. You can't tell people everything. And I said, well, you still have to start out and you have to make a difference. And he said, well, you can't possibly do enough to make a difference. And I said, no, that's not true. I said, I told him a story about the old man walking down the beach the night before a big storm had washed millions of starfish up on the beach. As far as you could see down this way, as far as you could see down that way, it was nothing but a beach littered with dying starfish. And this old man was reaching over and picking up starfish and throwing it back in the water. And this young man said, "Oh man, what are you doing? Are you crazy?" He said, "I'm putting the starfish back in the water." And the guy said, "Look, just look at down there. Look at down here. There's no way you could pick up starfish all day long. You couldn't make a difference." The old man didn't say anything. He just leaned over, picked up a starfish, threw it back in the water, and said, "Made a big difference to that one." So how do you do it? One bite at a time. And I think that there are two things that we can do. For example, the Truth Attack back here is out to re-educate the public one starfish at a time. And if you are out there doing that one at a time, and they then get out there and do that one at a time, do the math. Do the math. It's exponential, it's geometric, I don't remember which. I've got a minor in math and can't remember which most progression that is. But that was 40 years ago. The point is that I'm trying to make here is I think that the emphasis has to start somewhere, and I think that's the best way to start because it's the best way to put the government back on the 1,500 calorie diet that the founding fathers started out with. Now, why is that important? Because by breaking into the feed shed, and I'm a country boy, I grew up on a farm, you know, I think in those terms. By breaking into the feed shed, it has gotten way out of the box. That has allowed it to create departments, full cabinet positions that were never intended. I took a copy, I listed out the powers of Congress, including the enabling clauses in certain amendments on the left, and I put on the right the headings of the 2007 budget. Just the headings. I didn't drill in. And whenever I turned around And I tried to connect the dots. There were a lot of those departments that I could not find a single thing in the Constitution that allowed them to do that. One of those was the Department of Education. All right? What do we have that for? You know, another one is environmental quality. Who's responsible? We are. Do you think that your state is too incompetent to handle it right? Do you know why my state has done nothing about coastal erosion? My state has done nothing about coastal erosion. Of course, a lot of people, Louisiana, my state's done nothing about coastal erosion because it's been too busy trying to get the federal government to give it money to do something about coastal erosion. Now, you guys here, I mean, we're up in Phoenix. I don't know how many of you folks are from this area or part of the country. Maybe you, like I am, maybe you came a long way. But what do people in Phoenix know about coastal erosion? That's right. Well, how many people in Louisiana do you think know anything about hard rock mining? Or about open pit mining? How many people, do you want Louisiana people deciding how Arizona's environment is treated? Do you think people in California with their redwood forest are going to neglect that asset? Do you think they're going to, not protect it? Do they really want me in Louisiana? We don't have any redwood trees there. Do they really want me deciding what to do with those redwood forests when I want some cheap redwood for my new deck? I don't think so. So who's the best one to decide how to protect their particular environment? No two states are alike. A bureaucrat in federal court somewhere, a bureaucrat rather in the federal government, doesn't know anything about these things either. And yet he's making rules about it. He's never set foot in California, never set foot in Louisiana. And he's going to tell us how to protect our environment? Why do we need that? I tallied up all of those headings that I couldn't find any basis for. I tallied up all of that. And guess what I came up with? 56% of the federal budget has absolutely no basis in the United States Constitution. That surprise you? No. Now, you want to hear another layer? You got a state legislature in the state that you live in. Everybody here has a Republican form of government in their state that's guaranteed by the Constitution. And all of you have a state legislature, and all of you have a state representative. Some of you have a state senator as well. Does he answer to you? Does he represent your interest? Does he represent and reflect your will? Is he your form of consent to the laws that govern you? And you know why? Because of the federal income tax being misapplied to you and virtually every other American. The states have had all the oxygen sucked out of the room. They've got to go to the federal government begging, and they get their money, they get a piece of the loot that was stolen from you at a price. And the price is that they must first agree to ignore the will of their constituents. They first agree to enact laws as they are dictated to by a bureaucrat writing limitations and restrictions and conditions on grants of money to the South to the states rather, that it should never have had in the first place. Your legislature answers to the federal government. So are you ruled now by your consent in your state? No, you're not. Are you ruled by your consent in the federal government? No, you're not, because your consent doesn't allow them to come through with all of these regulations that you have. Now, I'm going to so my point is that I want to make is that Truth Attack needs your help to start with that first bite of the elephant. We have a lot of stuff back there on that table that I'm not selling. None of that's being sold. It's all given away. We're asking for contributions because it's going to take money, but we're also asking for people to get involved because it's going to take people. Everybody needs to be throwing starfish. And the more people we have throwing starfish, the more difference we're going to make. Finally, there is one other step. No one man can make a difference. No one man can solve this problem. Not me, not you, not even Ron Paul. But electing Ron Paul to the White House, sending him in, would be one hell of a start. Right now, the general public, 86% of the general public disapproves of what the federal government is doing in the Congress and how Congress is conducting its affairs. 86% of them. At the same time, though, 80% of people think their congressman isn't part of the problem. What I want to do finally is that I want to wrap up here real quick, because I just was informed, is to urge you to go back to your homes, find somebody to run for Congress, support Ron Paul, make a statement. Win, lose, or draw, we win with this election if we can make a statement. Think back in 1968. George Wallace wasn't elected president, and that's fine. He might have made a terrible president, but he made a heck of a statement and a heck of an impact on politics in this country. Ross Perot had a heck of an impact. He lost the race. Further back, 64, and I want to remind you of this whenever you start to get disheartened, because you're being shunned by the media, you're being shunned by the Republican Party, mainstream, hardcore Republican bunch. But when you do that, don't get discouraged, get mad, and work twice as hard, because you can do it one starfish at a time. You get out there knowing that no matter what happens at this race, Barry Goldwater did it in 64 without an internet. They didn't want him either. But get back home, find somebody who knows a little about the Constitution and who's willing to take an oath and mean it, and run them for Congress. Run them on the tax issue, the tax truth about the tax issue. Make the people know that they're being stolen from. Make the people know that their government is stealing not just their money, but their freedom. Make them know that being free is a lot better than being a victim. We're going to have to re-educate them, or we're going to lose it, and it's going to be our fault. And when we get to those pearly gates, and we look up at Ben Franklin, and we look up at George, all we'll be able to do is look down at our feet and hope that they don't say anything to us. Thank you.